I would like to call the school board meeting for September 17th, 2019 for the Des Moines Public Schools to order. Please take the roll.
Mr. Barron.
Here.
Ms. Bradley.
Here.
Ms. Langford.
Here.
Ms. Ellsburn.
Here.
Ms. Delagardelle.
Here.
Ms. Caldwell-Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Anderson.
First item of business is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is approval of the minutes for September 3rd, 2019. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ms. Langford, second by Ms. Delagardelle. Any discussion or questions? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have district recognitions, and I will turn it over to Dr. Ahart.
Good evening, Board. We are only a few weeks into the new school year, but already our students and teachers are earning notable honors, and we'd like to share 3 from Central Academy this evening. The first ones honor 2 of the Central Academy teachers. Bradley Jacobson, an AP physics teacher, is one of this year's 4 finalists from Iowa for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. This is the nation's highest honor for math and science teachers, and if Bradley goes on to be the state's recipient of the award, he will be the 12th DMPS teacher so honored. Also from Central Academy, Sherry Brooks, who heads up the English department, learned earlier this month that she is a recipient of the 2019 Yale Educator Award. This award recognizes teachers who inspired students at Yale University. Sherry was nominated for the honor by Forrest LaPrade, a DMPS graduate who is a member of the class of 2023 at Yale. And last but far from least, we are pleased to recognize this year's National Merit semifinalists. This year, 5 students who attend Central Academy and whose home high schools include North and Roosevelt, as well as Earlham and North Polk, earned one of the top academic recognitions a high school student can receive in the country. These 5 students join nearly 600 other DMPS students who have been so honored since the National Merit Scholarship was created 65 years ago. So now, I would like to bring back our frequent guest, Jessica Gogarty, our Director of Central Academy, to please come forward to share a little bit more about the award-winning start to the school year and introduce the honorees who are with us here this evening. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. I'd like to say welcome to Academy Awards Night. Ha ha ha, I'm so funny. Okay, first of all, yeah, it's an honor to be nominated. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Sherry Brooks, if you would come forward. Sherry's been recognized twice this year by elite universities for preparing her students for success. In the spring, she was selected for the Northwestern University's Distinguished Secondary Teacher Award, which came with $10,000. This fall, she earned the 2019 Yale Educator Award, and what makes these awards so special is that they both originated from her former students' nominations and persuasive writing, a skill she taught them. She's an inspiring teacher, not because she is the sage on the stage, but because she pulls wisdom and insight out of her students. In her class, they discover their own thinking and their own voice. Additionally, she provides unique opportunities for students in creative writing, which she voluntarily team teaches during the lunch period. She works with the 8th graders and the seniors, so all grade levels, and in fact, I think all of our National Merit semifinalists here tonight are in her class this year. She is also a building PLC leader. I'd like to commend Sherry Brooks. Sherry? Would you like to share any wisdom? Yeah.
Any wisdom? Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for the email. That was very sweet. I don't know what wisdom to share except for that my amazing students go on and do great things. Deanna was one of my students many, many years ago. And I'm sure these students are also going to go do great things. So it's all about them and the inclusive classrooms, right? Thank you.
Brad Jacobson. Brad has been selected as a state finalist for the Presidential Award in Excellence in Math and Science Teaching. And we have quite a few teachers in Des Moines who've earned this honor, 5 of them at Central Academy. But that speaks to the strength of our math and science teachers in Des Moines. This is no easy award to earn. As Dr. Adhart said, it is the top honor in science and mathematics teaching in the United States. The state committee can only select up to 3 finalists in math and 3 in science for the entire state of Iowa. And this year, they only selected 2 in math and 2 in science. Brad is a masterful teacher, getting his students to think deeply about the universal principles that underlie the data they collect. You will often hear him say in class, "What would happen if," and "How would we test that idea?" His class is an adventure. And like Sherry, Brad works with a broad range of students from 8th grade to seniors. He serves on the SRG task force and has been a powerful voice for us and our staff as a leader on our school leadership team. Brad Jacobson. And finally, we have 4 of our 5 semifinalists for the National Merit Scholarship. You guys want to come up? Less than 10% of the 1.5 million students who take the PSAT are selected as National Merit semifinalists. And Des Moines Public School has 5 of them this year. As National Merit semifinalists, they're invited to apply for the National Merit Scholarships that will become available later this year. To be National Merit semifinalists, students must be strong both mathematically and in English language arts. And all of these students have been participating in accelerated classes that Des Moines Public Schools offers through Essential Academy for many years. In addition to the coursework, athletics, activities, and clubs that they participate in their comprehensive schools and within their communities. I know that Fez was part of our Prep Academy, for example, and he is not here tonight, but we've had Kiki Levy from the 8th grade started with us, and the rest started in high school, which is awesome. The collaboration we have with our comprehensive schools is essential to the well-rounded success of these standout students, so I'd like to introduce them. Ryan Bird from North Polk and Roosevelt this year. Ryan? Prithvi Jamadagni from North High. Kiki Levy from Roosevelt. I promised I'd get that right. Olivia Nicholson is from Earlham. Our 5th one you may know is Fez Safar from Roosevelt. So I'd like to honor these students for this outstanding achievement. We're so proud.
Congratulations to everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, Jessica, and it's wonderful to hear all of the great honors and the great work that's happening. Okay. Next on our agenda is the consent items. We allow any person the opportunity to speak to the board for up to 5 minutes following the presentation of an agenda item. If anyone wishes to speak to an agenda item, please go to the information desk to sign up. Remarks must be germane to the agenda, and we ask that you avoid reference to personalities and character attacks, as these types of comments serve no productive purpose. We appreciate your input. As a reminder to the board and public, the board will not engage in discussion or deliberation with the speaker regarding comments made to agenda items. Discussion and deliberation will remain among board members at the board table, with speakers' comments informing said discussion, deliberation, and determinations as deemed necessary. Ms. Caldwell-Johnson, do you have the motion?
I do, Madam Chair. I move that the board approve the consent items in accordance with the recommended action for each item on the consent agenda, including bills previously authorized and certified and approved for payment by the board secretary in the amount of $3,060,616.16, and procurement card transactions in the amount of $518,048.84.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Caldwell-Johnson, second by Ms. Anderson. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have a public hearing. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item E1, public hearing for the remodel and print shop move at Prospect Support Center? Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. Dr. Ahart, would you please introduce the matter?
I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Angelo Architectural Associates for remodel and print shop move at Prospect Support Center, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I please have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation?
Move approval?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson, second by Ms. Della Gardell. Any questions or discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is item F1, open enrollment late applications for denial. Dr. Hare, would you please introduce this item?
Yes, there's a state code that dictates a open enrollment timeline that every public school district must follow. What you have in item F1 are late applications that arrived after the deadline and did not meet a special exception rule, and so were denied.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to deny the open enrollment late applications listed for item F1?
Move to deny?
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Caldwell Johnson, second by Mr. Barron. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to this item? Okay, any questions or discussion among the board? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is item F2, physical plant and equipment property tax, PEPL, approval of the resolution ordering elections. And I would like to have Dr. Ahart introduce this item.
Yes, so what we're asking for is the same thing that all of our contiguous districts have done at some point in the recent or distant past, and that is ask our voters to approve the maximum voter-approved PEPL, or physical plant and equipment levy, that's allowed by law. In turn, we will be reducing our cash reserve and management levies so that the net impact on our property tax rate in Des Moines is flat. So while it looks like we're looking for a tax increase, what we're really looking for is a shift in where those tax dollars are, into which fund those tax dollars are deposited. The reason that this is important for us to do is we can take our technology expenses, which currently are from the general fund, and transfer those into PEPL, the physical plant and equipment levy, thereby creating over 25% of the room that we need in our general fund budget to make our budget work for not just next year and the following year, but moving forward. So it's, I think, a very wise move for us to make. Unfortunately, on the ballot, we cannot promise that the management and cash reserve levy will be lowered, but that is what we will do if this is successful. And so there will be a net neutral effect on property taxpayers in Des Moines as a result of this, as a result of the voters approving this petition.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve item F2?
Move approval.
Okay. Any discussion or questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Caldwell Johnson.
Thank you. So your last comment, Tom, with regard to not being able to guarantee that the other levies will be adjusted, but our intent is to do
Well,
so.
actually, we can guarantee it. We're just not allowed to write that on the actual ballot measure.
So can you help us understand, I understand the goal is to not have a tax increase. So
Correct.
by not, by adjusting the other levies and by increasing PEBL from, what are we at now, 67 to 134 or something like that?
Right.
By doing that, we are leveling out, so there's really no net impact to the taxpayers, and we actually have the ability to shift some expenses from one funding stream to another.
Exactly.
What's the impact on the management levy and the other levy ultimately?
Well-
And how do we then recover if there are any challenges with the other levies down the road that we may have to adjust to then accommodate having lowered the levy this time around?
Sure. So the management levy is in very good shape. And likely, we don't have the exact adjustments that we're proposing, but we can modify those year to year. But likely, the management levy would be lowered less than the cash reserve levy. And where we're at with the cash reserve levy, I'm going to try to make this as clean an explanation as I can. Our solvency ratio, which we try to keep at around 15%, we've actually exceeded that, and we're unable right now to spend those dollars down. And so we're going to be limited in what we can levy for cash reserve anyway for it to do us any good. So over time, we would have organically been lowering that likely in the next 2 to 3 years to some degree or other. So and what we've also striven to do over time, and the board has done an excellent job of this, is keep the flat rate even as much as we can so that there's predictability, so that people can plan around that. And so by making this shift, while the initial intent is to shift the new technology leases into that PEPAL fund, there are other avenues that we have to absorb general fund expenses, so we don't have to stay with just that. So if indeed it would turn out that at some point down the road we felt like we needed to shift more or something else into that PEPAL fund, we could certainly do that, free up more cash, and not have the need to levy additional cash reserve dollars.
Okay. So, and I'm not asking these questions because I'm opposed. I'm
Oh, yeah.
asking
No,
because
sure.
I think
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
important that everybody's clear about what the net
Absolutely.
impact of this decision is.
Right.
I did a little research, and you're absolutely right that all of our contiguous districts are at the maximum, with the exception of Southeast Polk, which is at 67 cents, unless they've recently.
They've recently passed
Okay.
it last year.
All right.
Yep.
So we're the only district within Polk County that is not at the maximum, and probably our needs are even greater
Yes.
than the majority of the other districts that are not dealing with many of the infrastructure challenges and other just general fund challenges that we have in our district. I do think one of the things I have a bit of concern about is tax fatigue. And I think we have to be very careful, especially with the most recent local option sales tax that passed, that we don't get caught up in, again, sort of voter fatigue around tax-related issues. I think we can make an equally cogent argument about why this is important for this district at this time. But I do think that our ability to educate in a way that's understandable, but more importantly, educate in a way that helps people understand the value proposition of what we're doing, is critically important. So I would hope that at some point we will have the ability to have a work session with the board so that we can begin to be the advocates for this, but more importantly, rally other organizations to our cause, because I really am concerned about this notion of tax fatigue, especially in light of the most recent local option sales tax that passed. And I just feel like that's, if there's an Achilles heel here, that's probably it.
I agree. I agree.
Anyone else have comments or questions? No. And if we do have a work session, that'll have to happen really quickly because the election will be, is right around the corner.
And I just was going to reiterate some conversations I've been having with Tom about leveraging some of the board's political power that we have within the community, within our communities, and our partnerships that we all naturally have with other organizations. That, likewise, what Terry was saying, that we are in a good position to reach out to people who are already talking to voters. And we have many board members who are up for re-election who I know will be doing some voter outreach anyway, that those might be natural avenues. So yes, getting ourselves educated so that we can educate the community and the organizations that we're involved with would be great, so.
I would agree, and it might not be a bad idea also to engage our council, knowing that we passed a letter of support for the recent 1 cent sales tax as well, just to keep that in mind. Okay, we do have a motion by Barron and a second by Anderson. Without any other comments, please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is item F3, Monitoring Report 2.2, Treatment of Parents, Owners, and Volunteers. And I will turn it over to Dr. Ahart for the presentation of this report.
Okay, I'm anxious to have this report because along with the modifications that have been made both to this policy and to 2.1 and to 2.3, next year's reports will play a lot better. So you'll notice that there is some redundant information from the treatment of employees report that was shared at our last meeting, just because that was where the policies were in cycle. So forgive the redundancy, but we thought just to follow our consistent process that we would share that, essentially that same data again. And then there's a lot of other data in here that is unique to this report. But with that, I will turn things over to our Director of Communications, Phil Rader, and our Chief HR Officer, Susie Tallman.
Good evening. We're here tonight to share progress on the treatment of parents, owners, and volunteers monitoring report. We do not have a PowerPoint this evening. However, we'll just be walking through the data and the information that you have in the report in front of you. Just a reminder, the KPIs are parent complaints, communication figures, community committees, as well as DMPS volunteer survey. Parents have access to the formal complaint process through the district website. We have all the information on there posted for parents to access. As you can see, there are 4 areas where a parent could file a complaint: discrimination, bullying and harassment, sexual harassment, and Section 504. The data that was provided to you is over the past 4 years, and you can see that there was an increase from 15-16 to 18-19, just of 1 parent complaint. And if you look at the average over the past 4 years, it's about 10 parent complaints. If you also look at the average in regard to each area where a parent might file a formal complaint, the average for discrimination is 4, bullying and harassment 4, sexual harassment 1, and Section 504 1. If you also take a look at the chart that was provided to you, you'll see where each complaint area is grouped, and it shows you just over the 4-year period of time how many complaints were filed. I think one of the things to highlight is that the majority of the complaints that do come through from parents do get resolved, and what that looks like is someone is taking the complaint and working with the building and working with the parent and staff in order to resolve the issue. And the nice thing that this does highlight and show is that the majority of complaints do get resolved. If they don't, any remaining complaints you'll see are unfounded. There have been no complaints that are founded over the past 4 years. Phil will also go ahead and talk about communication figures and then staffed committees as well.
Yeah, thanks, Susie. Good evening, everybody. I know we've talked on this about this a little bit over the years, but communications by school districts and any organization has changed more than a little over the last 10 or 12 years. It wasn't that long ago that communications consisted of sending a note home in a backpack, hoping that something got printed in the newspaper, and if it was a good budget year, we might do a quarterly newsletter that we'd print up and mail every 3 months. Both the good and the bad today is that we have a lot more tools at our disposal. The good is we have those tools and can tell our own story better and reach people more immediately without a filter. The bad is people are on lots of different platforms today that didn't exist a decade ago, and we have to be there with them. So I just want to hit a couple highlights here of some of the tools that kind of form the foundation of our efforts in the communications department. One is our The Week at DMPS, which is our weekly e-newsletter. This past fiscal year, we sent that out 43 times. We typically do it every week during the school year, save for the holidays and spring break, and then go on kind of an every other week schedule during the summer months. Last year, we were up a little over 46,000 recipients of that e-newsletter each week. Today, because of new staff and new parents coming on with a new school year, of course, we're up a little over 50,000. Our blog and website, the website's really the foundation of a lot of our communications work. The blog is the heart and soul, because that is what feeds a lot of what we put out through our e-newsletter, through social media, as well as, frankly, it's all but replaced press releases as the media picks up a lot of their reports from our blog. The Des Moines Register in their community section uses a lot of the stories and information that we share there verbatim, going so far as to give us bylines and photo credits and what they print in the paper. On social media, frankly, DMPS has been on the cutting edge of that. We were one of the first major districts to dive in wholeheartedly in terms of using social media platforms as part of our communications effort, and have done a lot of work with the Council of Great City Schools to help other districts learn from what we've learned through our experiences. We're seeing steady growth in the use of social media and our followers, upwards of over 16,000 as the followers on Twitter, and up over 46,000 followers on Facebook as of the end of the fiscal year, which is up from the previous year. We are posting, averaging anywhere from 3, 4, 5 items per day, depending on the platform that's in use. The mobile app, the district launched this about 5 years ago. We're up to, at the end of June, we're up over 26,000 people within the district that have downloaded and putting the mobile app to use. And of course, we have other apps now that parents can use, such as Here Comes the Bus, which helps parents that rely on school transportation to know exactly where their bus is. Finally, on that chart, press releases, like I noted, we've gone way down on press releases. It's kind of, the Morse code of communications today in terms of being just very dated. We'll use it to announce major principals and other administrative positions. We'll use it to notify the media of events and forums and the like, but in this day and age, we're really more about telling our story ourselves rather than telling it through a press release and hoping that the media will pick up on it themselves. Two things I'll just say that aren't noted here. Referenced DMPS TV, which is our agreement with Mediacom. That's continues to be on the air and reaches about 60,000 Mediacom customers within the school district. And as I was referencing social media, I just want to point out Instagram is not noted here, but that has actually become our fastest growing. We're still relatively small compared to our other platforms, but we have about 5,000 followers on that, and it is our most engaged social media platform at all, and it's actually where we engage students the most in terms of them providing comments or likes or that sort of thing through Instagram. Just touch a quick reminder on our community staff committees. As you probably know, there are 4 of them. The audit committee, which has 5 community members that serve on it to assist the board with financial oversight and the responsibilities related to that. The equity committee, which has 7 community members that provide an outside the district perspective on our work around equity. That's, of course, our top priority. Our stakeholders engagement advisory committee, which includes 15 community members to work with the district on some of our major educational goals and needs for our students. And last but far from least, the facilities advisory committee, which consists of 10 community members to work with the school district around issues relating to the best use of our statewide sales tax funds. Susie?
Okay, and then you also have the volunteer survey data on responses to the survey that was given, and this is not new. You were provided the last monitoring report in regard to treatment of staff, just highlighting, overall the satisfaction rate for all questions is very high, other than when you take a look at Q7, that was in regard to volunteer opportunities on the website and just, continuing to do some problem solving around that. We had 5% of volunteers respond to the survey, just as a general reminder. And then Phil was going to highlight just some of the additional information in the report as well.
Sure. So we included in the report just a reminder about the 3 big changes in the school day for the new school year, and some of the efforts around that. One of those was, of course, the change to the high school schedule, going from the block schedule to a more modified block schedule that increased some student classroom time to address some issues of concern there. That effort's been underway for a couple years now, but publicly began in earnest last winter. There were a series of 5 forums held at the downtown library and at 4 of the high schools for parents, students, and others interested in this topic to learn more. Our high school director, Mike Bukovic, and other administrators working with the high school principals really did a great job of taking the lead on that issue to answer any and every question that people had and explain why the change was being made. Once that decision, in addition to promoting the forums, once that decision was made, then that just became a regular part of our social media world and our e-newsletters as we continue to provide reminders of what people should expect at the high school level heading into the current school year. Another change, not quite as dramatic as what we did a year ago, but was a slight change to the bell hours at the elementary level, moving the start time back 15 minutes, which I think universally was a positive change. Speaking as a parent, 15 minutes on a school day morning is important some mornings. Once that decision was made, again, that just became a part of our regular communications drill with reminders on the website, on social media, and in the newsletter on and off right up until day 1 of the school year. And then finally was the change to the school calendar with the Wednesday early dismissals. After a decade or so of the early dismissals on Wednesday afternoons, those, of course, will end the school year, and we're shifting over to full-day professional development sessions scattered throughout the year. That Mother Nature helped us with that, getting the word out on that change a little bit because of snow days. We, of course, ended early dismissals on Wednesdays following spring break in order to make up some of the lost time. So we were able to get people accustomed to this change before it became a permanent change this school year. So the winter weather helped us, in a way to just tell people this is what it's going to be like, come August of 2019. So, and again, with those 3 changes, we kind of packaged those together with TV, with social media, with the newsletter and website, just to, it made a nice package of changes to group for people to continue to put in front of them as we headed into the 2019-20 school year. That, I think, is all we have in the report. If there are any
Actually,
questions
I'm
or
going to
comments?
ask for a motion in a second to accept this report as compliant before we open it up for questions and discussion. So is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? Yep.
So I just had one quick question, because when I look at the, parent complaint KPI, one of the things that we consistently either hear about relative to open enrollment or hear about even when people come to speak to the board is bullying and harassment. And can you put this parent complaint number in context relative to who is actually advancing these complaints versus other complaints that likely could be coming, but we don't see here?
Yeah, I think typically a complaint in regard to bullying, harassment usually goes, are usually handled at the building level, and typically would go to, if it's taken to the teacher, the classroom teacher. If a parent feels something isn't resolved, then that might escalate to the building administrator. And I would say the majority of those are handled at the building level, and there are steps that are put in place to address that at the building level. Anything, a parent complaint that is entered on the district website, could be a parent potentially maybe that is still not satisfied with the resolution at the building level, or maybe someone that just is savvy enough to know where to, access the website and submit a complaint. A lot of times we find that a step has been missed in the process and the concern hasn't been brought to the building level, which is why I think you see that a lot of times there's a resolution to the complaint because a step was missed, and going back and just helping to bridge that communication between parent and the school, I think helps quite a bit in resolving some of these. So did that answer your question?
It does. I still think that there's a huge disconnect between the things that we regularly see coming to this table and this number. So I have to assume that a lot of things are being addressed at the building level, or if not, people are attempting to opt out. But when the opt-out option obviously doesn't work, then there really is no additional default, and people likely are not coming back through this process to wage a different complaint, I would assume. Is that correct?
Yeah, so some of the ones that we hear regarding, for instance, open enrollment, for instance, oftentimes, to Susie's point, what's been reported in the application process is inaccurate as to what's been reported at the building level. So a step was missed. There's a family voice in the form that was not shared at the building level to get it resolved. A step was missed. Mm-hmm. That happens very frequently. Mm-hmm. And so when that happens, we do try to engage them with the appropriate building staff. Sometimes that's resolved. Sometimes there's just, to your point, not an interest.
So, and just one other, just final question. So say, for instance, if we did see, or we see two here that were actually, I'm going to go back to 17, 18. So there were three, and three were unfounded, but in the previous year, 4 were resolved, and previous year prior to that, 2 were resolved. What does resolution look like?
Resolution would be that the building has, addressed their concerns, that the issue was taken care of, that steps were put in place to ensure that a problem didn't occur moving forward.
I still think there's a disconnect, but I'm going to leave it alone.
Excuse me, I put candy in my mouth at the wrong time. I thought you had a couple more seconds in your comments. But no, I'm going to echo that. I'm going to echo the disconnect that my colleague feels. Again, I think there's what we can measure through what we get through our data at the board table, and there's what's actually happening in our buildings. And I think that's been a central theme that we've experienced here at the board table, is how do we get the data we need to address what's happening at a building level? And just because we may not see it in the reports that are coming before us does not mean that we don't have some issues. And I think, again, what a complaint process looks like, you see in several spaces where people have to file complaints. Oftentimes folks don't, for a variety of reasons, whether they feel like it's too burdensome, inaccessible, or their voice won't be heard, and that deals with a lot of issues. And so I would just lift up, to this board and the superintendent moving forward, that just because we don't see it here in the data doesn't mean that we don't have an issue. I think we're all probably aware that there are issues of bullying and violence and harassment that are happening in our schools, and we have to figure out as a district what our response to it is.
Yeah, I certainly don't think anyone's making an argument that there aren't challenges to be addressed. This reflects those complaints that have arisen above the building level and filed a formal complaint at district. But we have parent concern data that's not really appropriate for this report that we certainly could share. That's recorded and actively processed with staff and parents.
That's, that's up for the board to decide, moving forward if they want that data. But I did just want to, I didn't want you to feel like your voice was just a solo voice on the board. Recognized and duly noted, and somebody else is also concerned.
Ms. Delgado?
Just a couple things. So yes, I would agree with that, but also another question I had, I know our website is translated into many different languages. Is the complaint form part of what gets translated through like the button if I just,
Through the Google Translate, yes.
okay, yes. Yeah, don't accidentally click on a language you can't read, because you have to like clear your cookies to get your website to fix itself.
And depending on the type of form on the website, typically if it has to be a PDF form, we'll translate that. That'll be
Okay.
translated in the 5 or 6 most common
Okay.
languages. If it's within the page itself, then it relies on Google Translate, which
And
has
that's kinda
multiple
what I was
languages,
asking.
but it's getting, it's a service that's gotten better and better over the years, so.
Yeah,
so
and
we've
that's
been,
kind of what I was asking with this complaint. Is it embedded in the code of the website that it gets automatically translated when I click the button to Spanish, Arabic, et cetera, or?
Honestly, I'd have to go back and look, unless
Okay.
you know. Yeah,
Okay, because
I'm
I just saw
sorry.
that was a conversation we had at the board table, I think about a year ago with our employee complaint process, that having that be more accessible. And I don't know how much of a difference it would make, because I don't know if I could walk you exactly to where this complaint form is. And I do know, as an educator, that a lot of these come to building principals, they come to teachers, they're resolved, at the lower level. But I just wanted to raise that up, that we should make sure that that's accessible. And then the other thing about this too is that I just want to remind everyone, this was something that as I looked at this, I was like, oh yeah, this report like this won't exist again. And so the data that we'll see around parent complaints it'll be part of a different policy, and so I'm sure we'll see some different things next year, so.
For sure.
Mr. Barron?
So yeah, I had a similar thoughts in looking at the data as well. Is that, and so I won't duplicate what's already been said. My only thought that hasn't been expressed yet by my colleagues is maybe there's, and I do speak this being a DMPS parent too, is maybe there's not as universal of an understanding of what the complaint process is among our parents right now, and what that looks like, because I think what folks are trying to get to fit together is, seemingly weekly or at least once a month, we have a parent come up and say, well, my son or daughter is repeatedly bullied and the school didn't do anything about it, and we get the data behind, or the report behind that, and see all of that, and then so you square that with data which I understand is beyond the building level, but still shows very few cases of bullying and harassment that were raised to that level, and so I think I do wonder if maybe there's some disconnect between what parents think the process is and how it is, and what our staff recognizes it to be.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of the bullying data that I think is in your thinking is reflected in a different report, because if the student made it at the school, the parent might be involved, but the parent's not actually filing the report.
Yeah.
Because what we submit to the state for bullying complaints far exceeds this.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem appropriate for this report. But it is, but it's more of a treatment of students rather than treatment of parents, owners, and volunteers.
And I agree with you. I don't think it's the same data point. I'm not looking for that. I'm just looking broadly at all of this and wondering if perhaps there's a bit of a disconnect. Honestly, I wouldn't know how to file a complaint. Now I'm only 2 years in as a parent, but I wouldn't know where that step goes, and I don't know how I would figure it out other than asking my building leaders.
Ms. Langford?
I do want to, though, acknowledge our communications team, because I don't think it's too often that we get the data of all that you're doing and a ton of reports. And I think that's really important. You all do a wonderful job, I think, in reaching out to a district of 33,000 students and families, and you go above and beyond through, social media and our website and the YouTube and the cable TV channel. I just think you all do a phenomenal job, and that doesn't go unrecognized.
Thank you.
So thank you. I think we're far above like any of our counterparts when it comes to like our communication team. So
I appreciate that. And I'll use that as a chance to plug, there's still one more week to see our photo exhibit at the downtown library if you want to see some examples of the good work of my team. So,
Ms. Anderson.
Yeah, Phil, I just wanted to thank you and your team for supporting the legislative team. I know that it's a lot of extra work, but it's important. I appreciate it.
good. Glad it helps.
Any other questions or comments in regards to the report? Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the floor. Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next item on our agenda is item F4, the quarterly board self-evaluation. And I'll do my little spiel about this. The board lays out the means by which we agree to governing the district on behalf of the community and for the benefit of our students through our governance process policies and our board management delegation policies. The board self-monitors so that we fulfill this agreement. According to Board Governance Policy 1.1, Governing Style and Values, Item 5, the board will allow no officer, individual, or committee of the board to hinder or be an excuse for not fulfilling its commitments. The board will monitor its process and performance for each meeting. Self-monitoring will include comparison of board activity and discipline to governance process and board management delegation policies. And the board will discuss its process and performance quarterly. For this quarter, we looked at governance process policies 1.4 through 1.7, and that report was attached to the agenda. And so I know I have items that I would highlight as part of our discussion, but would like to offer the board an opportunity to bring forward any items that they would like to discuss from this board self-evaluation.
I would just offer that I appreciate our diligence in actually completing it. But I do think that based on the comments that I read, there could be a few places where we might want to review existing policy. And I think the purpose of this really is for us to not only check ourselves relative to policy, but to also use it as a checkpoint with regard to whether or not there are changes that we want to advance or anything that we would like to see handled differently relative to our policies. So one of the thoughts that I had as I was completing this was really thinking much more intentionally as I go through it about places where we could have a much more deliberate board conversation or discussion about policy. And there was a time back in the day, I'm going to date myself now, when we used to have a regular review on a somewhat regular basis of all of the policies. So they would come before the board, every single policy over the course of a couple of years, so we would have a chance to review and refresh. I don't know that we need to do that, but I do think that there likely should be something that calls us to really hit the pause button on the policies and not just go through the motion of completing the self-evaluation, but really doing the other part of what this evaluation is intended to do, which is that policy review. So being much more intentional about that, absent just doing our individual evaluation relative to how we are conducting ourselves against the policy.
Right, yeah, and I think that's part of what that question regarding what should change, I think that is an opportunity then for the board to discuss or for individual members to actually bring forth whatever policy edit that they're thinking about, because that, I think some of the responsibility lies on individual members as well in preparation and in doing that and in really looking through and understanding what these policies mean and what we have committed to. So, and if there are issues around that, then bringing those forward at this time or at some regular time.
So just one other quick thing. Sort of as we think about upcoming elections and new board moving forward, I also think that there could be an opportunity for us to be a little less wordy in some of our policies and cut to the chase so that you don't have to read through paragraph after paragraph after paragraph to decipher what it is we intend. So maybe if we set it out, so this is the intent of this policy up front, so there's clarity about why the policy is in place, and then maybe reducing some of the language so that it's much more succinct and easier to digest and get through.
Yep, I don't disagree with that, and I've often wondered about an accompanying FAQ or other things as well. Like if I have an issue with this specific item, boom, go to policy, whatever.
A really good task for our new staff member.
Yes, yes. Anything else that board members want to mention or talk about? Any of the comments that were brought forward?
Cindy.
Yes.
And maybe that you noticed a similar theme, so I hope I'm not jumping on what you were about to say, but a theme that I've sensed throughout this is, you know, kind of the deadlines and the new timeline that we're gonna start to put ourselves on 10 days out. And I think board members are all mindful that that change is coming. And I think one thing when I was thinking about this is, you know, finding a system that works for you. And for me, it's Sunday afternoons. Like, I just know that's when I do board work, and Labor Day really messed me up because it was Monday afternoon and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Monday, not Sunday. But I think just finding whatever that time is and blocking it off in your calendar works for me. But I know that other board members probably have other systems. And so I just think like board members having autonomy to do that work in the way that it works best for them, knowing that we all have a deadline to meet, so.
Right, thank you. And then the other thing that, did anybody else have anything?
Well, just
Go ahead.
concurrent to Kirsten's point, and this was raised a few times about absences or being or being late to meetings and people having family. I do want to recognize that this is a school board, and there's only a handful of us that have kids still in school. And like if some of us are gone for things, it's likely, in my case at least, because I've got kids. And so I think we, you know, when we're talking about having a process for doing things and setting time aside, everybody's lives are different, and everybody's got varying levels of ability to engage and time to put into things. And I believe we're right to set deadlines, and we should hold ourselves to them. But we have to recognize that not everyone's, they're all coming at this from different perspectives and with different responsibilities. And that's what I'll say to that point.
I'm going to add on to that as well, because I did notice that comment, as well as the idea that the board chair could speak to people about their absences. I think that what I would add to that too is that if individuals have issues with individuals, they should be bringing that up to that individual and rectifying. We should all have, I think, that relationship with each other around that table, that if there is some issue that we have with each other, that's where it should be resolved. I don't think that should be incumbent on the board chair to take care of those issues. I'll say that for myself, and I will say that for the matter of future board chairs, unless it comes to a matter of not being able to reconcile. And I do believe we have, and it's in relation to conflict of interest, but the idea that a board member take up an issue around conflict of interest when they think a board member violates that. We do have a policy on that. I would encourage the board to follow that policy with whatever it is, and if you can't resolve it with the board member, then put it in writing to the board chair. But if it's otherwise, those things need to be taken care of in real time and with each other, is what I would say to that as well. That's one of the things that I noted. And then the other thing around is there anything else that anybody else had on that item before I move on? Okay. The agenda, there were some comments around agenda planning and agenda planning cycle. And I think maybe that, and to speak to clarification that Terry mentioned around wordiness and whatnot, there was the idea mentioned about the full board being a part of that process, and that just the board chair and vice chair plan the agenda. Really what happens is that the full board does have a big part in planning the agenda, yearly we approve or we accept a board report calendar. That's the basis for our agenda. We did that in May. And then in our agenda planning meetings that the board officers, and this is, I'm laying it out for all of you, the board officers meet with the superintendent and the associate superintendent. That's where some of the management items that they want put on are discussed and added to the agenda. And then anything that comes up in our board meetings, as well as board work plan that we discuss, might be added to the agenda. And anything that the board, that individual members want added to the agenda, we have a process for that as well laid out in that policy. So the board has a lot of involvement in planning the agenda. It's just kind of a formality that Kirsten and I participate in, and then have had the process of communicating that out after the fact. Also, just to remind everybody that the agenda isn't the board. When we approve that agenda at the beginning, that is another point in time where board members have say in that agenda process, because it doesn't become the board's agenda until we actually vote to approve that agenda. So I just wanted to put that out there as an understanding of that process, and maybe something that, to Terry's point, needs to be described better, describe whether it is worded differently in policy or just a part of an orientation process as well. I don't know what the answer is there, but that was another thing I wanted to mention. And then there was a catch, and this, Tom and Phil, on our website where the policies are written, are laid out on the website on 1.5 chair and vice chair role. There's some repetition. I think that was just a mistake in putting it out, and I can give you that information as to what that was. And finally, I want to give Tom an opportunity for input here, because despite the fact that this was a board self-evaluation, there was comment alluding to Tom. So if you'd like an opportunity to respond, please do.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Cindy. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate the board for going through this process in a consistent, on a regular, with regular frequency, in a very transparent way. I think that's tremendously admirable, and there are not very many publicly elected bodies that do that. So I think that's a real testament to the integrity of this board. I did want to take a moment to address a comment that was made specific to me. I am taking that comment to heart, and I'm glad to know of it. I would just ask that in the future, if there is critical feedback from me, I'm always happy to receive it. It would seem more appropriate to address that with me and not in a public setting. So, thank you.
Noted. Thank you.
Agreed.
Yes.
And I just want to echo what Thomas said, and I think that's really important, either meeting regularly with him or trying to figure out some way to keep those lines of communication open. That's something that I do with him regularly, and I think it's just that time that we do set to bring up those issues if we need to. So I just can't stress the importance of that, so that we can do those things behind closed doors instead of publicly. So I would agree with you on that and hope that others would take the opportunity to meet with you as well.
Thank you, Donna.
Cindy, when you were discussing agenda planning, you may have said this, but I didn't hear it, so I just wanted to reiterate it. There is it's in our policies, and I can't remember where it is exactly, but there's a specific procedure that we've outlined for ourselves. If a board member has an item that they'd like to bring forward, and I know we've done this before I think Rob brought something forward for like Latino or Hispanic Heritage Month a few months ago?
Immigrant Heritage Month.
Yeah, a few months ago, or Immigrant Heritage Month, yeah, a few months ago. And so we've, there have been board members that have done this, and we do this actually every time a subcommittee meets with policy. I think we just don't think of it in the same way, but there is, someone who submits it. And so we have done this in practice, and I just think maybe to highlight a couple of examples of how that looks like might help board members contextualize ways that if they have issues or ideas that they would like the board to discuss that exists, so.
Good point. Any other discussion or comments? I would take a motion and a second to accept the board self-evaluation.
Move approval of acceptance.
Any other comments? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. And thank you, everybody. Next is our board work plan, and this is a work plan that further details work that we've committed to doing to fulfill our governance duties and obligations. And so I will turn that over to Ms. Della Gardell.
Okay. We're really kind of down to the last few things. I think Tom had given us an update by way of memo that it looks like we will hopefully be taking back up the issue of meeting with city council prior to the fall elections when new members are seated.
After.
That's what I meant. Prior. Anyway, words are
What you
hard
meant.
today. Yep. Where are we at on our external monitoring, Terry?
So that's actually on me. I'm now through our big fundraiser at Oak Ridge, so now I can refocus my efforts on school board related issues. So I will convene our subcommittee, and I will not be at the next board meeting, so likely at the second board meeting in October. We'll expect to have something before the board.
Which I think will set us up really well with when our new board is seated in November. So, great. I can take a few items off. KPI review, I think we're doing a work session following some policy language and interpretations after the board meeting. Is that correct, Tom? In a work session tonight? Is that?
Yeah, we're doing our work session.
On interpretations.
On interpretations, yep. So
Yeah.
we're doing some work kind of.
2.1 and 2.3.
Yep, for 2.1 and 2.3. And then I have a note here, set collaborative work session around what we want to see on 2.1 is at this meeting. And then we've adopted our goal progress measures and our limitation progress measures.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, our goal progress measures, not limitation progress measures.
Okay, so that's still in process. And then the only new item that I have to add is we may want to start thinking about orientation process for
Yes.
new board members.
And so, yes, and what I would say to that is our, I believe, in policy, it's the board chair's responsibility, but I would like the help of our board development committee, which is the three of us, and then taking any input from board members as to what an orientation, I guess, ideas for what would be valuable for those orientation items, kind of thinking about what are the most important things to first know. You know, we usually meet with new board members to before the first meeting that they're sworn in at, and to kind of go through the agenda and understand what the process of the meeting is going to look like and all of those things, and then items for after that. So board member input on all of that I think would be great. But I think, yes, that's something we should talk about soon.
Deanna.
This is for personal accountability purposes. I think it was a couple months ago, we were talking about outlining a process for board vacancies. Yeah, and I saw it on there, and I volunteered to draft something, and my deadline was just before the election. So I just want to get that added to the list because I need that public accountability.
Oh, see, we crossed that off as done. I will take off the done so that we make sure that I bring it up at the next meeting, just to give you a reminder that we're still
I have
working
a
on
couple
that.
more. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not done. Thank you.
Are there any other work items that the board feels need to be added for us to stay on top of?
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Next, we have information-only items, just one entry there, preliminary plans for various school improvement projects for the board to review. And then we have items of privilege, and I just wanted to make everyone aware, everyone out there aware, in case it wasn't noted, that in our consent agenda that was approved tonight, we approved a labor union appreciation proclamation to declare the month of September as Labor Union Appreciation Month. So just wanted to point that out, that that's there. And then I am going to, this will be my last reminder, that the window for filing of a nomination petition to run for school board is open, with the last day being this Thursday, September 19th. 4 seats on the school board will be up for election, 1 at-large seat for 4 years, Director District 1 seat for 4 years, Director District 3 seat for 4 years, and Director 2 seat for 2 years. Candidates must live within the boundaries for which they are running. If running for a Director District seat, petition signatures must come from within the boundaries of that Director District. Petitions are filed with the board secretary of the district, and for DMPS, our acting board secretary is Nick Lenhart, and there is an abundance of information on the dmschools.org website under the board tab around election information. Do any other board members have comments to share?
I just wanted to piggyback off what Cindy was saying and just let voters and community members know that a number of organizations are hosting forums around school board elections. I believe there's one on Sunday that I saw that's hosted by a number of labor partners, and then there are others, I believe, hosted, I think, later this month or early October by NAACP, and potentially LULAC, I think, might be a partner. So that those are out there, and that those organizations would be great contacts if you wanted more information about those events. So.
Thank you. Anybody else? Turn it over to Dr. Ahart for the superintendent's report.
All right. I want to recognize a National Merit Scholar finalist who was unable to be here earlier, Fez Zaffer. Fez, welcome. You all, I think, are pretty familiar with Fez. You've seen him here a number of times. The reason he was not here earlier was that he was meeting with the editorial staff of the Register, reviewing questions submitted by students from around the state who will be attending our Youth Voice Presidential Forum that we're co-sponsoring with the Des Moines Register, that will take place starting at 9 a.m. at Roosevelt High School on Sunday. The board already knows about this, but this is just another shout out to anybody in the community who's interested. If you go to the Des Moines Schools website, you can find registration information. It is unlikely, if you submit a question at this time, that you will be allowed to ask it, because that deadline has passed, because we have to have those things organized. But Fez has just done a tremendous job of getting 8 candidates who are still very much in the running for the Democratic nomination for president in the 2020 election. And this is an amazing opportunity, really, to take advantage of our first-in-nation status and have our students, and not just Des Moines students, but high school and college students from around the state, engage directly with some of the most influential political operatives in the country, and to make sure their voice is heard and that our youth priorities are part of the conversation. So thank you for that work, Fez, and we hope to see everybody on Sunday at Roosevelt High School.
Okay, and with that, I will close this meeting, and I am going to immediately gavel in our special meeting. Okay. I would like to call the special meeting of the Des Moines Public School Board of Directors to order for September 17th, 2019. Please take the roll.
Mr. Barron.
Here.
Ms. Bradley.
Here.
Ms. Langford.
Here.
Ms. Ellsbernd.
Here.
Ms. Della Gardell.
Here.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Anderson.
Here.
There's only one item of business for this special meeting, and that is Polk County Auditor boundary changes. And Dr. Ahart, would you please introduce this item?
Yeah, so as the board is aware, Polk County has a number of different taxing entities within its boundaries. Those are various cities, municipalities, and school districts. And those boundaries have been established for decades, most of them. And over time, more and more of the property within Polk County gets developed, and what looked like common sense boundaries prior to development, sometimes after development happens, provide some challenges. And so Polk County, in order to just clean up the tax rolls, really, and not have property owners with one parcel that sat in two different, I think there were only two different entities. I don't think any of them split three ways. So we don't have a homeowner or a business owner who's has a property that's being taxed at one rate for half the property and one rate for the other half of the property because they sit in two different school districts. So Polk County engaged with representatives from all of the different entities that are provided tax dollars directly from property tax around the county, and attempted to clean all of those up so that we don't have any properties that are split between two different school districts in our case. And so for Des Moines, we were able to work all of those out. It looks a little bit different for all the different entities because they have different border neighbors. So we shared properties that were split between two districts with Sadell, Southeast Polk, Urbandale, West Des Moines, and Johnston. And we were able to work out essentially a swap of land that equated to the school district giving up 19,100 square feet of taxable property and gaining a different 19,100 square feet of taxable property in various proportions. But the total is essentially a wash, but it is very much the right thing to do for our taxpayers in Polk County. It also simplifies the bureaucracy at the county and at the school district level as well. Simplifies things, and in our case anyway, we won't see any difference in terms of revenue, but things will just be simpler for everyone. And so what you see are those 5 different resolutions, and then there was also included in there a boundary discrepancy resolution, which is part of the cleanup, but not related to a property swap. It was just an error that was identified between Des Moines and West Des Moines that had been in place for a long time, and it had just been erroneously recorded in the tax rolls. And so we're resolving that as well. And so the other school boards at a meeting this month are taking the same action so that hopefully Polk County has all of this rectified, that can correct all of their records, and when tax collection begins the next time around, all of that is cleaned up.
Thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve the Polk County Auditor boundary change resolutions?
So moved.
Is there any questions or discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. And I will adjourn this meeting.